There are more than 1 million dishes on this planet. Almost all of them stay exactly where they were born, cooked in one region, eaten by one people, forgotten by everyone else. 12 dishes that broke out. 12 dishes that crossed oceans, survived wars, got copied badly in 10,000 cities, and somehow became the food that the entire world agreed on. You have eaten most of them. You have probably never eaten the real version of a single one. Because here's the thing nobody tells you. The famous version and the original version are almost never the same dish. The pizza you order is not the pizza that was invented. The sushi you eat is a modern invention that would confuse the people who created it. The paella on the tourist menu would get you laughed out of Valencia. So let's fix that. 12 of the most famous foods on Earth, what they actually are, where they actually came from, and how to tell the real thing from the imitation.
Pizza, flatbread with stuff on top, is ancient.
Egyptians did it. Romans did it. Persians allegedly baked it on their shields. So pizza is not an invention, it's a refinement, and the refinement happened in Naples in the 1700s and 1800s, where it was street food for the poor. Cheap dough, cheap tomatoes, eaten folded, standing up with your hands. The famous story says a Neapolitan baker named Raffaele Esposito made a red, white, and green pizza for Queen Margherita in 1889 and named it after her. Historians have poked serious holes in that story, so treat it as legend rather than fact. What isn't legend is the standard it produced. Real Neapolitan pizza has rules, and they are absurdly strict. 4 ingredients in the dough: flour, water, salt, yeast. No oil. No sugar. The oven runs at around 485 degrees Celsius, and the pizza is in and out in 60 to 90 seconds. That's why the crust puffs and blisters and blackens in spots instead of turning into a cracker. The result is soft. That surprises people. A proper margarita is not crispy, it's floppy in the center, wet from the tomato. And you eat it with a knife and fork, or you fold it. Everything else on Earth, thin crust, deep dish, stuffed crust, New York, Detroit, is a descendant. The hamburger, nobody can prove who invented it, and at least 4 American towns will fight you over it. Louis Lassen in New Haven, Charlie Negreen in Wisconsin, the Menches brothers in New York, Fletcher Davis in Texas, all credited, all disputed, all somewhere between 1885 and 1904. What's not disputed is the ancestor, the Hamburg steak, minced beef, seasoned pan-fried, brought to America by German immigrants from the port of Hamburg. Someone put it between 2 pieces of bread so factory workers could eat it without stopping. That's the whole invention. The burger became global because of standardization, not taste. White Castle in 1921 proved a burger could be identical in every location. McDonald's turned that idea into an assembly line. By the 1970s, the hamburger was the most exported meal in human history. Here's the part most people don't understand. The flavor of a great burger doesn't come from the beef, it comes from the crust. Slam ground beef onto a screaming hot surface and you trigger the Maillard reaction, where proteins and sugars break down and rebuild into hundreds of new aromatic compounds. That's the smell, that's the taste, which is why a smashed, thin, ugly patty on a flat top usually beats a thick gourmet one cooked gently. Thickness is ego. Crust is flavor. Sushi did not start as fresh fish. It started as a preservation method, and the rice was thrown away. The original narazushi came from Southeast Asia and reached Japan over 1,000 years ago. You packed fish in salted rice and left it to ferment for months. The rice produced acid, the acid stopped the fish from rotting, and when you finally opened it, you ate the fish and discarded the rice, which by then was a sour paste. It smelled appalling. It kept people alive. Everything you recognize as sushi is barely 200 years old. In Edo, modern Tokyo vendors started skipping the fermentation and using vinegared rice to fake the sourness instantly. A chef named Hanaya Yohei is generally credited with the leap around the 1820s, a slice of fish pressed onto a small block of seasoned rice, served immediately. Nigiri, and critically, it was fast food. Street stalls, eaten with fingers, in seconds by workers. The white tablecloth reverence came much later. Modern sushi also depends on something that didn't exist until the 20th century: industrial freezing. Deep freezing kills parasites, and it's the reason raw fish became safe to sell worldwide. The version you eat in a landlocked city exists because of refrigeration technology, not tradition. Tacos the taco is Mexican, obviously, but the word may be industrial. One widely cited theory from food historian Jeffrey Pilcher traces it to 18th century Mexican silver miners who wrapped gunpowder in paper and jammed it into rock to blast it. They called those charges tacos, a little wrap containing something explosive. The name transferred to lunch. Structurally, the taco is the simplest food on this list. A corn tortilla, folded, with filling. But the tortilla is doing something chemically clever. Corn is treated with an alkaline solution lime water in a process called nixtamalization, which softens the hull, unlocks the niacin, and makes the corn nutritionally usable. Mesoamerican cooks worked this out thousands of years before anyone understood the chemistry. The most famous taco in Mexico today is also an immigrant. Tacos al pastor comes from Lebanese migrants who arrived in the early 20th century with shawarma meat stacked on a vertical spit. Mexican cooks swapped lamb for pork, added chili and achiote, and put a pineapple on top of the spit. A Middle Eastern technique, a Mexican flavor invented in the 20th century. If it's crunchy, folded, and pre-formed. You're eating the American version, which is a real thing with its own history, just not this one. Ramen is Japan's most famous dish, and it is not originally Japanese. It arrived from China, most likely through Chinese immigrant cooks in port cities like Yokohama in the late 1800s and early 1900s. The name itself points back to Lamian, hand-pulled Chinese wheat noodles. For decades, it was known in Japan as Chinese noodles. What made it Japanese was catastrophe. After the Second World War, Japan faced severe food shortages, and huge quantities of American wheat flour came in. Rice was scarce, wheat was abundant, and cheap noodle stalls exploded across the country. Ramen became the food of rebuilding. Then in 1958, Momofuku Ando flash-fried a noodle block so it could be rehydrated in minutes, and instant ramen turned it into a global product. The technical detail that separates real ramen from noodle soup is alkalinity. Ramen noodles are made with Kansui alkaline mineral water. That's what gives them their yellow color, their springy snap, and their ability to sit in hot broth without dissolving. No kansui, no ramen, just noodles and soup. And the broth is a labor statement. Tonkotsu means pork bones boiled hard for 12 to 18 hours until the collagen and fat emulsify into something opaque and heavy. That cloudiness is not seasoning, it's time. The croissant, France's national breakfast, is Austrian. The ancestor is the Kipferl, a crescent-shaped Austrian baked good that existed for centuries. It came to Paris in 1839 when an Austrian entrepreneur named August Zang opened a Viennese bakery in the city. Parisians loved it, French bakers copied it, and then French bakers did the thing that changed everything. They rebuilt it using laminated dough. Lamination is the entire trick. You take a block of butter, encase it in dough, and roll and fold it repeatedly. 3 folds of 3 gives you 27 layers of dough separated by 26 layers of butter. In the oven, the water in that butter turns to steam, the steam pushes each layer apart, and the pastry inflates from the inside. That's why a real croissant shatters when you bite it and leaves debris everywhere. It's not one thing, it's dozens of paper-thin sheets held apart by air. There's a rule that makes shopping easy. In France, croissant au beurre made with butter is traditionally straight. The curved crescent shape often signals margarine. The famous crescent, ironically, is frequently the cheaper one. Spaghetti alla carbonara feels ancient and isn't. There is no reliable printed record of it before the mid-20th century. It shows up in Rome around the end of the Second World War, and one strong theory is that it emerged from American military rations eggs and cured pork meeting Roman pasta. There are exactly 4 ingredients beyond the pasta. Guanciale, which is cured pork jowl, not bacon and not pancetta. Pecorino Romano, a hard sheep's cheese, not Parmesan. Egg yolks. Black pepper. There is no cream. There has never been cream. The sauce is an emulsion. You beat raw yolks with grated pecorino, then combine with hot pasta off the heat, using a splash of starchy pasta water to bring it together. The yolk thickens gently, too hot and it scrambles, and you've made pasta with sweet omelette. That narrow margin is the whole dish. Carbonara is famous because it is 4 cheap ingredients arranged in a way that is genuinely difficult to execute a technique disguised as a recipe. The name suggests charcoal burners, carbonari, though even that is contested. What isn't contested is the pepper. It's meant to be aggressive, coarse, and visible. Biryani is not a rice dish with meat in it. It's 2 dishes cooked into one, and that distinction is the entire point. The lineage is Persian. The name relates to the Persian word for fried or roasted, and the technique traveled into the Indian subcontinent and was transformed under the Mughals, where royal kitchens turned it into something enormously more elaborate. Every major city then built its own version: Hyderabad, Lucknow, Kolkata, Karachi, Malabar, and they genuinely differ. The defining method is dumb. You layer partially cooked rice over marinated meat in a heavy pot, seal the lid with dough so no steam escapes, and cook it slowly. The meat's juices rise as vapor, saturate the rice, and cannot leave. Nothing is stirred. Nothing is mixed. That's why a proper biryani is not uniform in color. Some grains are white, some yellow, some deep brown, and they should stay separate, long, dry, individual. If it's evenly orange and slightly sticky, you're eating a pulao or a rice dish that was mixed after cooking. Delicious, possibly, but a different dish with a borrowed name. The difference between kachi and paki is simply whether the meat goes in raw or pre-cooked. Kachi is harder. Kachi is the flex. Peking duck is less a recipe than an engineering project, and its goal is not the meat, it's the skin. It was refined in imperial kitchens during the Ming Dynasty and served to Chinese emperors. The famous restaurant Quanzhude, opened in Beijing in 1864, turned it into a public institution. The process is genuinely strange. Air is pumped between the skin and the fat to separate them. The duck is scalded, then coated in a maltose sugar solution, then hung in a cool, ventilated room to dry for up to 24 hours. Drying is not a step, it's the step. Water is the enemy of crisp skin, so the bird is dehydrated on purpose before it ever sees heat. Then it roasts, often hung over fruit wood. What comes out is skin like glass, thin, lacquered, mahogany, and it audibly cracks. Traditionally, the skin is served first and separately, sometimes with nothing but sugar, so that nothing competes with it. The meat comes afterwards, wrapped in thin pancakes with scallion and sweet bean sauce. In the strictest service, the carcass then goes back to the kitchen and returns as soup. 3 courses, 1 bird, no waste. Paella, the most famous version of paella, is the one Valencians consider fake, and they are not quiet about it. Paella comes from the region around the Albufera Lagoon in Valencia farmland, not coastline. It was field food, cooked outdoors over an open fire in a wide, shallow pan. That pan is called a paella. The word is the equipment, not the recipe. The traditional Valencian version contains rabbit, chicken, green beans, a large white bean called garuf, tomato, saffron, and rosemary. Sometimes snails. No seafood. No chorizo. The chorizo thing genuinely enrages people there. Seafood paella exists and is legitimate, but it's a coastal variant, not the original. The technical heart of the dish is what happens at the bottom of the pan. The rice is spread thin and never stirred, so it absorbs stock in place rather than releasing starch. As the liquid runs out, the layer touching the metal caramelizes into a crust called sakarat toasted, slightly bitter, chewy. In Valencia, that crust is the prize, and people scrape for it. If your rice is creamy, it was stirred. That's risotto technique. Different country, different dish. Döner kebab, the vertical rotating spit, is Ottoman, and it's older than most people assume. Stacking seasoned meat on a vertical skewer so it self-bastes as it turns the fat from the top, continuously dripping down and cooking the layers below, was documented in the Ottoman Empire in the 19th century. The word dinar simply means turning. The technique spread and mutated everywhere it landed. In Greece, it became gyros. In the Levant, shawarma. In Mexico, as we covered, al pastor. But the specific thing most of the world eats meat carved into flatbread with salad and sauce, handheld, is a German invention. It was created by Turkish workers in Berlin in the 1970s, and Kadir Nurman is frequently credited with selling the first one in 1972, though other claims exist. Nobody patented it. Nobody made a fortune from the idea itself. Today it's arguably Germany's most eaten fast food and a fixture in almost every European city. The quality tell is simple and visible. Look at the cone. Real Döner is stacked from whole cuts of marinated meat, so you can see distinct layers. A smooth, uniform, glossy cone is processed and pressed a meat product shaped like a Döner. Pad Thai is the most famous Thai dish in the world, and it was, to a meaningful extent, a government project. In the late 1930s and 1940s, Thailand under Prime Minister Plaek Phibunsongkhram pushed a program of national modernization and identity building. The country faced a rice shortage, and rice noodles used far less rice per serving than rice itself. So a noodle dish was promoted, heavily recipes distributed, street vending encouraged, the dish tied explicitly to national identity. The name literally attaches the country to it. The irony is that the technique is Chinese. Wok stir-frying, rice noodles, and the whole method arrived through Chinese communities in Thailand. It was reframed as Thai. The flavor architecture is what made it travel. 4 forces balanced against each other: sour from tamarind, salty from fish sauce, sweet from palm sugar, and heat from chili. Not one dominant taste in negotiation between 4, which is also the giveaway. Overseas versions almost always overshoot the sugar and skip the tamarind, ending up orange and sticky and one-dimensional. Proper Pad Thai is brownish, dryish, sharp, and hits sour first. 12 dishes. Every one of them looks nothing like the version that made it famous, and every single one crossed a border to get to you. That's part 1. Part 2 goes after the ones that are somehow even more argued about sushi's biggest rival, the dish 2 countries have taken to court, and the sandwich that started a war of words that's still running. Tell me in the comments which one you've eaten in its home country, and which famous food you think is massively overrated. I'll read them. Subscribe so part 2 finds you.